Good morning to everyone who's joining us here today. We're going to give it one more minute as attendees file in, and we will get started. Just give us 1 minute. Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Laura Burns, head of terrorism research here with George Washington University's program on extremism. I'm honored to be joined here today by this panel of experts. Just really thrilled about learning from them and their expertise today. First, we have Dr. Kohav El-Kayem Levy. She is the founder and chair of the Civil Commission on October 7th Crimes by Hamas Against Women and Children, and a recent author of a landmark report on Kinocide, Uncovering the Weaponization of Families. Kohav is an expert in international law and feminist theories and has served as a Sophie Davis Fellow at Hebrew University's Leonard Davis Institute's program on gender, peace, and conflict resolution. And she is an Israel Prize laureate and teaches at Reichman University. Next, we have Miss Anila Ali, who will be joining us without video due to some connection issues from where she is joining. She is the author and founder of American Muslim and Multi-Faith Women's Empowerment Council. She is a Muslim faith leader, author, civil rights advocate promoting interfaith dialogue, women's empowerment, and religious freedom. She co-founded CalPAC to educate girls in Pakistan. AMMWEC was the only Muslim civic society organization to sign on to the Abraham Accords. Miss Ali is a former teacher and political candidate and has led international peace-building delegations and chaired international religious freedom roundtables. Next, we have Mr. Mutassim Ali, who is a legal advisor with the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, and he is the co-author of the independent legal analysis into breaches of the Genocide Convention in Sudan. Mr. Ali is a co-author of the report on Kinocide that we'll be discussing today, and his current practice focuses on international criminal law, international human rights and humanitarian law, transnational justice, and targeted human rights and anti-corruption sanctions. Mr. Ali is a doctor of juridical science candidate at the American University Washington College of Law. His research is focused on public law, conflict resolution, and duality of peacemaking and constitution-making processes in post-conflict states. Our final panelist, Mr. Shamdeen, unfortunately has experienced travel delays early this morning and will be unable to join us, but we will proceed with this esteemed panel that we have. Going forward, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending here with us, and thank you to the panelists for joining us to talk about these very important issues. So I think we'll begin first. I would like to start with Dr. Kohav El-Kayem Levy to talk about an original study that she led into sexual violence against women during the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. Can you just begin by telling us how that study began and what your findings were, et cetera?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you so much for having us and for having this event, this important event. So after October 7th, we were shocked by the magnitude of the attack, by the magnitude of the events here in Israel, and very quickly on that day, Hamas documented its actions in the southern part of Israel, and we started receiving very disturbing videos of extreme forms of violence against women, children, families, and it was I often say that we felt existential threat that day, especially with the documentation being so widespread. And slowly and gradually, we started receiving, as experts in international law, human rights, and gender justice, we started receiving reports of extreme forms of violence and torture of women. We saw, first of all of us saw, I think, very early after the attack, the video of Shani Look's body taken almost naked and her body disformed in a jeep into Gaza while the crowd is spitting on her body. Other hostages, women taken very violently by men with blood on their bodies. And it got us to understand that we have to start and document all these war crimes. We knew that we have to do everything in our power to preserve the historical truths, especially as one of the only crimes that was already denied very early after October 7 was the sexual violence. So we took upon ourselves to document it, to collect information, to collect the digital materials of Hamas itself, to collect information from victims' testimonies. And unfortunately, as the days passed, as the months passed, the magnitude of the sexual violence revealed to be widespread and systematic, with patterns, especially of sexual torture, of burnt bodies that were sexually abused, of mutilation, of shots in the genital area of the victims in their faces, reports of gang rapes, witnesses that saw these extreme forms of violence. I often say that we've seen and we've known as experts a long time the nature of sexual violence, and Hamas, I felt, wanted to inflict the most extreme forms of violence and torture on the victims.
And when you were conducting this study, I believe that you and I, when we spoke before, talked about the fact that when some of the victims who survived, because many of them, of the studies that you conducted, correct me if I'm wrong, were of victims who were actually killed. They don't have a voice anymore.
Exactly.
Their bodies tell the story of what happened to them.
Exactly. People that were evacuating bodies, for example, they videoed the scene, and you can see bodies taken out of the rubbles with objects in their genitalia, very abused, handcuffed. Many of the victims that were sexually abused were handcuffed. And yes, and even a video of a burned body of a woman that was sent to us very early after the attack, where you see that the upper part of her body burned and the lower part of the body without any clothing. So I want to say I really want to recognize and tell all of us that, and I think I shared it with you as well, Lara, that the most difficult part and challenging part is the exposure to these materials. It doesn't become easier. It's the most challenging part of our work, the exposure of the team, the trauma that it creates for us, that we're not only collecting the videos and like putting them in a file, not looking. Many documenters do that. They feel that they are unable to listen to the voices, watch the videos, and I completely understand. As legal scholars, especially as gender expert, we felt the responsibility to bear witness and to analyze the materials and to give voice to the victims in ways that others can't. And especially since people tell us, can you show? And we show to those experts that can access the materials and that we can responsibly reveal materials. But in many cases, the families don't know what happened to their loved ones. So I'm grateful for amazing activists like Miss Anila Ali that has joined us, that came to Israel to bear witness, to go through the sites, to see what happened, and to believe and stand with us in this very difficult moment.
Before we move to Miss Ali, and I want to get her perspective on the global aspect of sexual violence against women, children, and even men. But before we go there, I want to address something that we just briefly alluded to, which was the denial component. So you did have people who survived the atrocities of October 7th, women who were uh, experienced sexual violence. Can you tell us about the denials that they face and how that amplified the trauma that they endured?
Yes, the denial was the reason that we took this mission at the first place. I was saying today to a colleague that I don't know what would have had I taken this role if we would have received empathy and acknowledgement and recognition, and the denial was so quick. And so I want to say it's another form of violence. And we felt that we have to do everything in our power to reveal the truth, to share what happened to these people. And I found that much of the denial comes also from anti-Semitic sentiments, from, I don't know, paradigms. I truly cannot explain it to myself, because you don't have to be a feminist scholar to imagine what happens. First of all, with such hatred, that people come in with such hatred, with the aim of creating such destruction and humiliation of the victims. And I want to emphasize that it's not just women, it's men as well that were humiliated sexually and sexually abused. One of them, one that revealed that he was raped, had to go through a polygraph. I think me and you talked about it. Polygraph check is in legal proceedings in Israel to get compensation for what he has endured.
So victims, and I don't think that was the only person that was forced to undergo a polygraph to establish the sexual violence. And but I just trying to get my mind around that concept as a woman and as a human. You know, you've been victimized, you've survived sexual violence, you've survived a terrorist attack, only to be confronted with such denial that you're forced to relive those experiences in a polygraph examination. It seems just unacceptable.
And it's even more than that. I have to share that the hostages, the sexual violence in captivity, the witnesses that come back from captivity, the hostages that came back and shared their story, reveal even stories of family members that had to that were forced to commit sexual violence in each other. Stories and hostages that did speak up, like Amit Sosna, has become a target for so much hatred and denial that it maybe people that suggested she's inventing everything. But I do want to say that I am hopeful that women like her will get the courage and will have the strength to go through all of this. We know of many victims that come and give testimonies that tell us, please don't share our stories, that are really scared of being known. And I'm very much respectful of what they need and what they experience. It's just I feel bad that this is what they have to experience now.
Certainly, it's a horrible thing to imagine. Miss Ali, thank you so much for joining us. Can you? We're just diving right in. I know that you have a lot of experience in examining, you know, the concept of sexual violence and women's rights globally. Can you give us a little bit about like your background in that area and then what you experienced in your studies of the October 7th victims?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad that we're talking about it. It's a very important thing. I think it's a collective duty as women to speak up for each other. This was what I believed when I was a teenager, and I saw what was happening to women. And I also think that this is something that we're struggling with as adults now that, you know, our children, our girls are grown up. What I saw on October 7th, you know, my whole life has changed, first of all. But I think what I saw on October 7th was something that as a woman and as the head of a women's rights organization, first and the largest in America, we could not be silent. Also, I want to say that on October 7th, Muslim Brotherhood / CARE in America, they won. Um, you know, even before Israel had reacted, they had started saying Israel lies, nothing happened. They raped their own women. The soldiers rape the Gazans. Nothing happened. They started trivializing the whole thing, and that's when, on the October 7th, I saw like a brief moment of empathy, like Dr. Levy was saying, and then after that, it turned into this hatred that had been simmering, that had been taught to them through, all of these anti-Semitic mosques, these organizations globally, through media, and it just turned into, oh, no, 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 that never happened. Israel did this to its own women. And for me, I started getting messages from Muslims. Some of them, sadly, were my friends and family, educated lawyers, educators, engineers who I'd known, and I had lived with them, saying the Israelis deserved it. And I said, what? Nobody deserves. No woman deserves to be raped. No woman deserves that. And as that kind of rhetoric increased, I realized, myself, that when I came to America, the first few, instances of offenses against women were exactly those, rape, sexual assault, Muslim women not coming out and speaking. And it was the Jewish organizations that we worked with that gave us the strength to come out. We found lawyers together. We were fighting for women together. But on October 7th, Jewish women stood alone. Nobody was believing them because they were Jewish. And I saw that increase, and I called our partners, Combat Anti-Semitism, and I said, when I'm talking about this, people are just like, they're all, they've been brainwashed to delegitimize Israel. And this is not new. This is Muslim Brotherhood, been around for 40 years, invested in every institution in America to make sure that every Muslim and every person who's on the far left hates the Jewish people. And this is what's going to happen. I saw the trajectory of hate increase, and the disbelief coming out of our mosques, out of our Muslim leaders. I spoke to imams and I said, no, but we must. I reached out to all my partners. They left us. Sadly, a lot of my board members also resigned, who were women. Women did not believe women. I called on to a lot of my women's rights partners and organizations and said, okay, let's go. Let's go, let's be bearers of truth. Let's go see truth, I witness it. And that's when I reached out to my partners, Combat Anti-Semitism. And I said, look, my people are not believing me. They're saying Israel made it up. And also the fact that, there's dignity in the Jewish people. They didn't want to show the atrocities, even though Hamas had openly, the terrorist video saying, call my mother, I'm going to heaven because I killed 10 Jews with my bare hands. And the mother and father saying, I hope to have 10 sons like that. Those videos were out, but they were blocked somehow. The Muslim world was not seeing them. People that I talked to around the world who were telling me, why did you stand up? Why are you standing up for the Jewish people? No, 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 no. They were not seeing it. So when we went to Israel to bear witness to, the kibbutz, we first also went to the Negev desert because we wanted to tell the Muslims, okay, these are Muslim women. Hamas even attacked Muslim women. Not that it matters. You don't touch women or your mothers. You don't do that to women. But what we heard from, Ahmad, he was a Palestinian. He was from Gaza, and his wife was a Black Muslim. And they were coming back home after meeting his family. And as they entered, he had an encounter with Hamas. His wife was wearing a full hijab. They spoke Arabic. And he said, we are Muslim. She's Muslim. My wife is a muhajjaba. Don't kill her. They shot her from the neck to the toes 32 times. His ninth child was behind in the car. He somehow saved that little baby. And the rest is a miracle. He told that story to all of us. We're Muslims. We're listening. Then we went out and we met the Moroccans. Some of them were Muslims, some of them were Jews. We met an Egyptian woman who was married. She was a Muslim. She said, look at my children. Ukhti, she said, sister, look at my children. They are Muslim. And Hamas came into this house and they wanted to, harass us. She spoke in Arabic to them. She was like Muslim. God knows if that was the reason she got saved. But that is not how you treat women. The story that I told a lot of my Muslim partners in the world, globally, who are imams, clerics, very influential leaders, when they asked me, why did you stand? And I said, I have read about the pre-Islamic era where decapitation was the norm. Desecrating the human body was a norm. Raping dead bodies was the norm. And I said, the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, came into this world and he stopped all of that. There are rules to even engage in you never touch women, children, and seniors in war. This was not even war. This was unprovoked. Gaza had its own rulers. They chose them in 2007. And the whole world thinks that Gaza was ruled by Israel. Even Egypt, nobody wanted anything to do with them. And they knew that the Arab world is changing. They did this to womankind. They did this to the nation of the Jewish people. It is genocide. They took a woman who was pregnant. They cut her stomach. They took out the baby and they baked the baby. They burnt.
Ms. Anila, if you don't mind, you brought up the term kinocide. If you don't mind, I would like to thank you for all of that wonderful insight. I would like to move to that topic since we have not gotten into that yet. If you don't mind us going back to Dr. Levy to talk about how she came about finding that pattern.
First of all, I want to thank Anila again. And I want to mention that the story about ripping up the body of a pregnant woman was later proved as something that came from another place, but a Bedouin pregnant woman was actually shot by Hamas that day, and the youngest victim is her baby that was 14 hours old. She was in labor on the way to the hospital. Hamas ambushed them. They shot her in her belly. She was taken to the hospital, and then they were able to save the baby for 14 hours. And she was Bedouin, she was Muslim, just as Anila said, and that it didn't skip anyone, and that they had to witness the loss of their baby this way. I also want to say that as when you walk through the kibbutzim, you see many houses that were burned to hot ashes. So many bodies were burnt in ways that we cannot understand what happened to them. Only those bodies that had, how would you say it, Lara, that bodies that were still kept in a condition that we can understand what happened to them, we can tell their stories. But I want to acknowledge the fact that others were burned to ashes, and also to acknowledge the fact that speaking up on these issues, just advocating, just as Miss Anila Ali did, requires such courage and bravery. And many of the experts that we meet that want to share information about October 7 share with us how difficult it is, that many turned their backs to them. One expert from France told us that she had represented victims of sexual violence for over 15 years. Never had she experienced the kind of hatred after examining the crimes of October 7. So I want to say that and thank Anila for that. And to your question, while we were documenting the sexual violence, Lara, we started seeing very disturbing videos of the terrorists entering the houses in the kibbutzim and torturing families. I'll give one example of the Dan family that they entered the house and you see the house covered with balloons. They murdered their eldest daughter, and the video shows the father covered with blood, shocked. Her little siblings are crying, and the mother is screaming, "This didn't happen, this didn't happen," and they're sitting on the floor. And we felt physically unable to document it. Like, let's stop, we can't, let's stop the video. We felt that we're seeing something that is so difficult. I often say that if there is hell, this is what it looks like, someone abusing your loved ones. And the kind of the look in the parents' house, other videos show similar torture and parents being separated from their children, begging not to be separated. And then we understood that we're seeing something that is extremely violent. I found myself calling experts around the world, among them Professor Erwin Kotler, the head of the Raoul Wallenberg Center in Canada, from where Mr. Mutassim Ali is joining us. And I told him, listen, Professor Kotler, we're seeing such difficult abuse of families, torture of families that look similar, and that it's repeating in different places. And we don't have any kind of words to describe it. Other international scholars, I asked them, have you heard about it? Have you heard about torture of families, abuse of families, violence against families? I tried every variation. And when I understood that we're seeing something that was never being named, we decided to document the stories of each and every family that had a member that was either murdered or abused. And what we saw is 6 distinct patterns of abuse that repeated. As I said, for instance, the separation repeated in many of the victims' stories. They told us that the hardest moment for them was the moment of separation, when they took the father or the mother or the children from their parents, or separated brothers and sisters. And that made us understand that we're seeing a systematic attack. When you put all the information on a spreadsheet, you can see clearly 6 patterns of abuse, among them the murder of family members in front of one another, the use of social media. They used the social media of the victims they took their phones, uploaded it to Facebook to show the way they are torturing them or abusing them. And also other family members that were connected to the social media had to bear witness to this cruel crime. And
Dr.
then,
Levy, let me just, for clarification purposes on that, just because not everyone may know, when you say the terrorists uploaded it to social media, you mean that they took the victim's phone and on the victim's account, so that the victim's family and friends could see, uploaded their murder or their torture or what was happening. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes. In some cases, for instance, in a case that we're now involved in, they took an image of a murdered body and sent it to the mother of the victim. So now, because she wasn't at the site, she's not recognized as a victim of terror. So we're fighting that she'll get compensation from the state. The terrorists just took the phone, and it wasn't in one place. It wasn't one cruel terrorist that thought, oh, this would be extremely cruel to send the parents and the siblings and the loved ones the images of their family members being tortured. They did it again and again and again in different places. And the testimonies that families are sharing with us, that they will never forget these images. It just stays with them, scars their souls. I think it's what we wrote in the Kinocide report is that it's a trauma that is multi-generational. And we decided to call it Kinocide because K-I-N, kin is as familial relations, and side as in the systemicity of it, and in the aim to create such a deep destruction of that family. Sorry, Laura, we cannot hear you. You are muted.
Thank you for that. And I want to come back for some more specific examples, but before we do that, I would like to go to Mr. Mutassim Ali. to get his perspective on what he has observed relating to this phenomena globally and with a specific focus, I believe, in Sudan.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lara and team at the program on extremism, for convening this timely event highlighting one of the tragic atrocities of our time. Um, and at the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, which was established by our international chair, Professor Erwin Kotler, who's former Minister of Justice in Canada and former parliamentarian, we take the issue of atrocities very seriously. It is one of our main pillars. And so what we do is really utilize our network, our expertise in highlighting these atrocities, making sure that the perpetrators are held accountable. And this really comes from the humanitarian legacy of our organization was named after Raoul Wallenberg, and this is to demonstrate the one person, one man with the courage to act, right, can save a life of many people. And so this is the reason why we focus on this particular issue, Sudan and Russia and Ukraine and many other places. And just to briefly begin, this is this is not a new sort of phenomenon, right? Like we've seen this a lot in many other contexts, and Sudan is just one example. We've seen this in Sierra Leone previously. We've seen this in Rwanda and former Yugoslavia, in Afghanistan, and many other places. But in Sudan, particularly in 2024, we investigated the atrocities committed by the warring parties in Sudan, the two military factions that are still fighting today. We investigated the situation against the Genocide Convention. The idea was to say whether there is a breach of the Genocide Convention. And we looked at the facts, and one of the things, of course, we determined, based on clear and convincing evidence, that genocide has been committed in Sudan, in the Darfur region. This is actually the second time that such a determination has been made. First was in early 2000s. And second, it was in 2024. We made that determination. We engaged in serious initiatives, including with governments and the like. And the idea is to make a genocide determination. We're glad to see the United States making that determination earlier this year, and we're hoping that we have other states joining. But one thing that I would say that is connected to some of the atrocities documented by Kohaf and her team is that there are three, at least, patterns that we can tell. One is that these atrocities, the genocide in Sudan, the October 7th, and others, did not begin with the brutal acts themselves. They began with incitements, right? Deliberate policy that was employed by perpetrators for years. And so it did not really happen all of a sudden. And so if those who were engaged in this, in the documentation of the conflicts on say, for example, in Israel or in Sudan and other places, you can already tell that there was like an incitement policy that premeditated these atrocities. Second, as Kohaf mentioned, perpetrators themselves document these atrocities. And that is also the case in Sudan. They publish their acts on social media platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok, right? Using, victims' accounts to do so, and sometimes even on their own accounts. Um, you know, we haven't seen this in the past. Maybe there wasn't, we didn't have social media platforms, a couple of years ago. But I think the reason why um, the perpetrators today, um, share their abuses with the broader public is that they fear no justice, right? This is because of the pervasive policy of impunity. And this is also part of the reason why I think, the international legal mechanisms need to be sort of reimagined, or there's like a weakness somewhere because the perpetrators fear no justice because they haven't seen any. And that is the case also in Sudan. Right. In Sudan, we've seen genocide that is taking place for 2 decades, and pretty much no one has been held accountable. And so today we see the perpetrators, in a broad daylight, basically broadcasting their actually even sometimes live, on social media platforms. And the third pattern of these atrocities is that they're committed on the bodies of women, children, and elderly. These are the most vulnerable groups. Of course, one of the reasons is a humiliation, and the second is really destruction of the protected groups in whole or in part, and that is a textbook of and that's basically the clear definition of genocide, right? The idea is to target the protected groups with intent to destroy them in whole or in part. And we have seen that again in Sudan, and of course, October 7th. This is to say that um, there are a couple of things that should be highlighted when it comes to the global context. And number one is the gap um, um, in accountability for these atrocities. Um, these violations, and that gap comes from the fact that these atrocities were committed by individuals and groups that are backed by a network of complicit actors. These atrocities were made possible because of um, the perpetrators have the means to commit these atrocities. You know, they have the funds, they have powerful states that are backing them, and so unless we also speak about the finances and the backers of these perpetrators, we will continue to see them time and again. And we cannot hold the backers and the finances accountable without having a serious political will from the international community. Because sometimes these backers and at times states, have, a powerful influence globally at the UN Security Council and other places, regional organizations and the like, and that makes it difficult to end the atrocities. So I'm going to leave it there, and I look forward to answer further questions.
Thank you very much for that very insightful perspective. And, it provokes a lot of questions, right, for us in society to think about how do we go about countering these types of activities, the kinocide and the sexual violence, if it's being denied or not recognized in the international community. It's a huge challenge. For a moment, I would like to go back to Kohab, and I know that we talked when we were talking about the sexual violence, and I think that a lot of the sexual violence and torture blends into the Kinocide that was being perpetrated. But you alluded to one specific example, and I think I want to bring it back here because we're talking about targeting family units and targeting the vulnerable. And you mentioned that that you have it documented that at least in one instance with hostages, that there were family members that were forced to perform sexual acts on each other. And I just would like you to tell us, if you can, any more about that, and that the impact on the psychological impact that could have on the victims and their families and the family unit.
Yeah. I want to thank you for that question. I want to emphasize that when we investigate torture of family, one of the first thing we see is the immense suffering it creates. As I said, we couldn't even document it because it was so difficult, and we had to really do all the effort that we can to make sure we get all the details and the stories, but it was just heartbreaking. And this the creating this suffering, I wanted to say one of the things that was important for us to discover, thanks to the help of the Raoul Wallenberg Center, and to explore is that it wasn't just here, that it happened in other places. We started talking with victims from the Yazidi communities that told us, please mention that it happened to us. Victims from Sudan that Mutassim mentioned, victims from Sierra Leone. We mentioned many places around the world where this kind of suffering was done intentionally. When I say that the reason that we started mapping this is and understanding that we're seeing patterns, it's actually the understanding that it wasn't random, that it was an organized attack because of the suffering that it creates, because of the trauma that the victims suffer. And one of the things that happened because of the fact that these crimes were documented was actually that we fear that it will be copied in other places around the world. So when we watch these videos, we feel it's horrifying, right? But we know that other terrorists watch this and understand, wow, there is something here. We can inflict even more pain if we do it to family members. And so we often express our concern that this kind of violence is going to be copied, especially because of the use of digital devices. I also want to mention that one of the things that is most important for me and is actually being able to give language to the victims, being able to recognize what they've been through. You know, a father of a 19-year-old victim hostage that was murdered in captivity, Hamas created a video of her begging for her life from captivity, and then the end of the video shows her body. And he called me and he told me, Kochav, I heard you on the news talking about this unique suffering caused to family members who witnessed what happened to their loved ones. And I finally understood that I'm not crazy. I had 2 heart attacks and I felt everybody besides me can recover, but only now that you said that it's different, that it's a different crime that has exceptional cruelty in it, gave me a way to understand what I've been through. And even yesterday, we had a family that we're now helping them get compensation here in Israel that said exactly the same, that they felt they live on another planet, that no one understands them. And they thanked us for recognizing that this creation of family targeted terror is different, is traumatizing them in ways that is different than any other kind of terror. I hope it answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. And yeah, a scary, prospect that is realistic is that there will be terrorist organizations who copy this behavior because they want to inflict cruelty. And on that, I'm going to go to one of the questions that a member of the audience had for Mr. Mutassim Ali. because it relates to that, I think. Like we don't really see an end to this a type of activity in the near future. So, given your work on Sudan and the legal frameworks for genocide, how does this is a question from the audience here? How does genocide fit into or challenge the existing legal definitions and thresholds for genocide under the Genocide Convention?
Yeah, thank you. That's really an excellent question. Um, and so the term genocide, and at least from the documentation on the Convention of October 7th, um, the the genocide as a crime can be analyzed um, as a genocide, right? If we're able to demonstrate that has been committed with the intent, the special intent to destroy the protected groups, right? And so it can be within an existing legal framework, the Genocide Convention. It can also be understood as part of crime against humanity. We do not have a convention on crimes against humanity, but I think that should be one of the recommendations of this of Kohav's excellent report, that the term genocide should be incorporated as part of that convention. And of course, genocide can also be a war crime, right? Provided that it is committed in the context of a protracted armed conflict. So it can be incorporated as part of the existing international criminal law and legal frameworks, but it can also, be a standalone crime that will have to be developed moving forward. But I think for me, I see the significance of the term genocide, not only its legal weight, but also the ability to capture the grievances of the victims. I think, and Kohav can correct me here, I think one of the reasons why the term came to existence is that she hasn't been able to see any existing legal framework or even terms to describe the grievances of the victims and their families, and that is part of the reason why Kinocide was coined. Right, we want to capture accurately the atrocities. And so even in the context of Sudan, I think, and I hear refrain from citing specific cases because there were just too many. Um, but honestly, the brutality of the perpetrators cannot be imagined. The way they commit atrocities, the way they talk about it, the way they glorify and celebrate these atrocities, and as such, um, the scope of victims is not only limited to those who are directly impacted by the horrific acts themselves, but also to the broader family, community, and the whole society. And that is part of the reason why I think the term genocide is so important.
Thank you very much for that. That makes complete sense, and appreciate that answer. So let's go to, there's another question here for Dr. Levy. How do you see the concept of genocide influencing future legal definitions of torture or crimes against humanity under international law? Similar to the question that we had from Mr. Ali. And again, kind of aligned with, I think this question probably pre-existed Mr. Ali's answer, when these acts are designed to destroy the family or societal bonds. Like, how do you see this concept impacting, future legal definitions, and what can we do to help make progress in that area?
Yes. So I think really Mutasim has already answered most of the questions. So we point that genocidal acts can be part of a genocide attack. It can be part of crimes against humanity. It can be already recognized in existing international law, as for instance in other inhumane crimes. and we show that it's actually a form of torture. And so we have a publication that we'll share with the participants showing how it can already be incorporated using existing international legal tools and understood in that way. Another important thing that I think it's important specifically for that, for this panel, is actually recognizing Kinocide as a strategy of terror. Understanding that institutions that have taken upon themselves to fight terrorism have to acknowledge that this is a new development, or as I said, it happened in other places, but it's an evolution of terror that has to be recognized as such by counterterrorism institution and put them in their policies, put it in their plans. We actually find ourselves meeting with a lot of terror experts and national security experts wanting to hear more. Understanding that this may come to their region, their area. I've never been in touch with terror experts as I am now that want to learn more of this and want to understand how they can incorporate it in national plans to fight this kind of terror.
Thank you very much. And I wonder if either one of you, because we were going to have Mr. Abed Shamdeen here to talk to us specifically about the observance of this type of crime, this type of terror, as it impacted the Yazidi community in Iraq. And I know that Mr. Ali referenced that, but I don't know if either of you want to expound upon, some of the findings from the impact to that community as well.
I can say a few words, and Mutasim, I'll turn it to you later. We're actually writing now about an academic piece about how Kinocide happened and a torture of families has happened in other parts of the world, especially the Yazidi community has experienced separation of family members, sexual violence committed in front of family members, abduction, mass execution of family members in front of one another. So we are exploring that. And Mutasim, if you have something to add on that in terms of the Yazidi community.
Not really much, but I think the experiences of victims, wherever they may be, I think, not only by the atrocity and the crimes themselves, but I think the denial of the atrocities that was referenced earlier, and I think that is in itself is a betrayal to the victims and the like. And so I think the atrocities against the Yazidi community or the people of Sudan in Darfur and other parts, or even in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, for example. These are, horrific crimes, but I think what adds more to the horror of the crime, not only the silence or or the acts of the perpetrators the silence of the international community or the acts of the perpetrator themselves, but also the denial from some. And I think that really harms the victims a lot, and it shakes their faith in the international legal regimes to respond to the atrocities.
And I'll add that also. Oh, sorry, Laura.
No, I was just going to say, I think that is a very compelling point, right? It's the denial. And I think that, we talk about the denial, and there are people that are openly and, aggressively denying that these things happen around the world and on October 7th. But more than just the denial, it is the silence from those who can be advocates. And it relates to another question that appeared is, what role can civil society, including survivors and advocacy groups and research centers, play in raising awareness for crimes involving the weaponization of family units? And I think it's very important because we talk about advocating and we talk about people who are deniers, but what we really haven't addressed are those people who just remain silent, and how that silence furthers the denial. Basically, it is not neutral. The silence is not neutral. The silence is actually empowering the denial. If anyone has comments.
And on that note, definitely, I would like to um, quote Elie Wiesel in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in 1986, and he said neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim, right? And silence encourages the tormentor, not never the tormented. And I now add that. Denial not only harms the victims, but also it's a form of complicity in the atrocities themselves.
Exactly. And I'll add to that. You said it's a form of complicity, and I was thinking it's another form of violence. We know that from individual cases of sexual violence, when all the victims need sometimes is recognition. They don't need they don't need even sometimes the legal system. They just want recognition. They go through hell proving this in court so people would believe them and would believe that it happened. So I remember after October saying that we're seeing the same denial mechanisms that are usually inflicted on victims of sexual violence individually now being inflicted on us collectively as a people, as a nation, and as Israeli women. And it's important for me to say that the crime of Kinocide is continuing, it's ongoing. We still have hostages, family members that were separated, and Hamas sending families videos of their loved ones. For instance, two hostages, Yair Or and Eitan Horn, are brothers that were kept together, and then only one of them was released. So they were separated, but then Hamas, a week after the separation, a week after one of them returned, they published a video showing the moments of their separation. They filmed it. They made sure they film it. Another hostage, they forced him to produce or like to make himself as if he's talking with his 6-year-old son and with his wife. And you see him, it's the tournament of, of needing to speak to your wife and child just in a way that is extremely cruel, not only for him there, it put a lot of emotional distress on him, but the video then released for the entire country and for the family to see. It's continuing. We have these videos on a daily basis. We have these the suffering of the family as a daily reminder, I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. That's a very important point. It is not, it didn't end. It is ongoing. We
And
only
I think
have
people outside of Israel don't experience the fact that these videos are still released, that Hamas is still, I feel like psychologically playing with our minds and our souls here in a very destructive way. Sorry.
Agree. No. I want to go to Miss Ali very quickly for a comment on copycats in this phenomena, in this use of genocide.
Yes, I I heard the excellent discussion, and then I thought about the fact that we knew as Muslim women, we know what abuse is. We know what violence against, and we knew that this is now going to be glorified. It's going to be amplified, and there are going to be newer ways to hurt women. And that's exactly what has been happening. I want to tell you the cases against the crimes against women have exacerbated. In fact, young women, 21-year-old recently, TikToker was killed. There were 2 honor killings in Pakistan. I remember Taliban killed a woman. They stoned her to death. I remember seeing that with my eyes, and I could never unsee that. Recently, I saw another one where they actually took a woman who had married, she was old enough to marry by consent, her somebody she loved, and the family agreed, and then the family decided that they're going to teach them a lesson. They took the video and they shot her, and they shot her several times, and they made a video of the woman. It was all ISIS, Hamas, all this Daesh style killing, and this is going to increase. So if we are women and we know that this crime comes at the cost of all of us, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or you're Hindu, Muslim, Christian, we are women. It affects all of us. These were the copycat murders, the kind of things that I saw happening on October 7th. And I'm seeing that increase. Another one in Malta that happened. He killed his girlfriend, chopped her up into pieces, made a video. Another one that happened recently, about a year and a half ago, for which I'm hoping, I've been raising my voice. The guy just chops her up, and the whole family is involved. Why? Because she didn't want to marry him. I mean, these are the crimes that we as Muslim women, we have to suffer. There won't be anyone to stand with us if
Thank
we
you for
don't
that.
speak.
We have to speak. And I think that, it's kind of something that, the webinar may end on us here, but just really quickly, I think that's one takeaway that we can all do something about is, using our voice to help bring awareness to this subject, no matter who we are, because silence is not acceptable. Thank you all. Thank you to this very esteemed panel for your time. Thank you for the attendees. And we, look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you so much.